Welcome everyone to another Dealing Bytesize. Today is going to be a slightly extended edition because we are going to be talking about our DCS 9500T, which is our group temperature screening camera kit. It's a thermal camera, so it's slightly different from most of the other cameras in our range. Here with me, as always, is Craig Kirby.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, as I mentioned, the thermal camera, there's a lot of thermal cameras on the market at the moment, and that's obviously because of the current situation with the way that it is. The economic impact of days off sick and poor productivity are costing the economy a staggering amount of money. A survey commissioned back in 2017, which was the latest time that it was done by Britain's Healthiest Workplace, suggested that absences and presenteeism are costing the UK economy £77.5 billion per year. And the worrying part about that is that it's up 6.2% from the year previous. They also found that on average, 30.4 working days per year were lost to sickness or illness related underperformance. What is discovered was that presenteeism is rife within UK business, and what presenteeism is basically days wasted by staff too sick to adequately do their jobs. They're basically being forced into work by the expectations of their employers. The total adds up to a loss of 6 working weeks of productive time per year, which is staggering figures. The survey was done across 32,000 workers, so it was definitely a sizable, a good sample size there. So the issue is that some employees are loyal. Maybe they're just a little bit too loyal. Consider those who discount their illness and come to work because they need to meet a project deadline. Since coronavirus is thought to mainly spread between people who are in close contact with another, the slightest sniffle, cough or sneeze from any member of your staff could generate anxiety and even panic amongst your workforce. So to really dial up the efficiency levels of your business, we need to start sending employees home, send sick employees home to stop the spread of any virus, not just the current issues that we have at the moment. So enter into that our new thermal AI camera. And what this camera will allow you to do is actively identify people with fevers before they get into your office. And it's a slightly different option from some of the others on the market in that our camera allows you to scan multiple people at once, but we'll go into that in a little bit more detail later on, as you might expect. The camera comes with medical grade accuracy of plus or minus 0.03 centigrade. So it gives you a great indication as to whether further action needs to be taken with anyone or So who is the camera for? So you can see here we've got four different target markets, and I'm fairly sure that there's plenty more out there. So the need for this in schools and universities is basically let's keep our children safe, let's keep our children from getting sick, and also let's stop them from infecting teachers and spreading everything around to their classmates. So installing this in a school, send home pupils before they can infect anyone around them. Customs and airports, it's a great solution for customs and airports because you can actually stop the disease from leaving the country, for people flying across, they're sick, they've got elevated temperatures, and taking the disease wherever they go. So a great solution there for customs and airports. The solution for factories is fairly relevant because I think we've probably all seen in the news that one of the factories had to do some investigation around food production where people had actually been diagnosed with the COVID-19 virus, and our camera could help to stop that. I think, Craig, you've got some you had some figures on the...
Yeah, that's right, Alan. From what I've heard, it's certainly in the news reports, something production of that kind of size that deals with poultry and that sort of factory could cost up to £500,000 a week,
Oh gosh.
which is quite a hefty number. Certainly not the first time that the factory shut down, so they're well aware of how much it costs. But yeah, if you can avoid that, then certainly that kind of figure really puts it into perspective, I think.
Well, it does when you weigh it up against the cost of one of our cameras, doesn't it?
It certainly does, yes. I've actually done some site surveys for a couple of factories where they deal in food processing, and one of the IP surveillance requirements they have is sort of background in terms of how much data is stored and things like that. But one of the effects is that if you have a bad batch or you have an infected batch or someone is processed and there's a batch that needs to be required, there's a lot of money that goes into investigating that batch, because it's not just a person, it's not just that particular batch. You have to find out what's been infected, what's been contaminated, and all the repercussions in terms of storage, where that containers, bringing those containers back in. There's a lot that gets involved.
Gosh, yeah. And yes, so the last example is hospitals and doctor surgeries. I think we can all agree that who's going to take care of us if the doctors and nurses and everybody else gets sick? So a great solution for them. I mean, you can't stop sick people coming to a hospital or a doctor's surgery, but you can maybe make sure that they sit further away from each other, or make sure that you wear the appropriate PPE when you're examining them. So a good early warning system for hospitals and doctors there. Okay. So now we all of this camera is compatible with ONVIF as you might expect. So Craig, do you want to talk a little bit more about?
Yeah, so anyone that's used our IP surveillance solutions in the past might be familiar with what ONVIF is. It's basically an agreed set of standards that a lot of camera vendors operate with, and it allows things to be able to plug into other devices as well. So necessarily you might not have a D-Link NVR, or maybe have a D-Link camera that might work with an NVR of a different manufacturer, so long as it's ONVIF compliant. And likewise, if you have a D-Link NVR working with a different vendor camera, it all integrates and works seamlessly together. So the nice thing about this camera is you can have some recording. So there's actually two different cameras in this device. There's a thermal camera and there's a standard camera, and they have to work together in order to do the overlapping and detection, which we'll go into. But you can actually store that storage information as actual video feed as well. So it's not just a thermal camera, you can use it for security too. So if you put it in a lobby area or a foyer, you are getting that extra protection, not just the thermal side of it too.
Brilliant. So what's in the box? We're not going to go through all of the fantastic stats and bits and bobs in there, but it's just important to mention that in the box you get the camera, you get the black body, and you also get a wall mount, so that you can attach it to the wall. You'll see later on an example. We've got the wall mount in our own head office, and we'll show you the picture of that a little bit later on. But all the stats are on there. All the important stuff is on the screen there if you want to just read that in a little bit more depth.
Okay, so scalable deployment. So this camera can be just plugged into maybe an power injector, power over Ethernet injector. that can go directly back to a PC, so there's communication, or you can put in a single switch to make it a little bit easier for plug and play, as long as the PoE on the switch itself. Standard PoE, so it doesn't require anything beyond 15.4 watts, and that will power both of those cameras that's built into the thermal device. And then you'll have a piece of software, which is the DCS P9500C, and that's a free bundled software that allows you to actually control the camera in terms of imaging and collecting all that data, processing and seeing it. So that's the direct integration. You don't necessarily have to do it that way. You can plug it into your existing IP surveillance integration if you want to. So if you already have an existing NVR, or you already have a network that you want to plug the camera into, you're welcome to actually do that. And then you can have the PC that sits onto that same network controlling multiple cameras, not just one.
Brilliant. The actual software on the system, here's just a couple of screenshots of the one that's set up in our EHQ office. So what you can see on the left hand side over here is that's a count of the number of people that have been scanned so far. I take it, Craig, they're on the left hand side.
Correct, and it breaks it down into a total amount of people and the total amount of people that were over temperature as well. Because you can actually have multiple cameras of these, then you can actually select what kind of imagery is coming from which camera as well, or multiple cameras if you want to.
And then down the bottom here, circled in red, because these are our dangerous people. As good looking as they all are, unfortunately, all of these people have now been put into quarantine because they've all registered temperatures over the recommended amounts.
That's right. And just to be clear on that, Alan, this is just for testing purposes. Yes. These people aren't actually ill in their office, so no. That's fine.
No, we can't put our boss into quarantine as much as we want to, Craig. And you can see over here on the right hand side a very smiley mark on the right hand side here. These are just the full records of everybody's temperature who has come into the office on that day. Okay. So now, just to show how the system looks. So over here on the left-hand side, you have the setup in Taiwan. Now, Taiwan opens up to the street. So what they've done is they've set the camera up so that when people approach the lobby, you can see there on the left-hand side the camera, and then on the right-hand side, a little bit obscured by the plant there, but that's the black body. So that will register the temperature of anybody who approaches the reception desk. These cameras will work better if they're deployed indoors. I think that's a very common, a much better use is to use this indoors. You'll get much more accurate readings. And then over on the right hand side, you've got the HQ office, which is where Craig and I work, or not at the moment because we're both working from home, but we've set up the thermal camera in our office, and we're on the second floor there, so people will have already entered the office, but that's pointed at the double doors entry into our office, and the black body is just out of shot on the right hand side there behind the doors. So just two examples of how it can be set up there. How does our solution differ? So, I mean, Craig's probably a better place to explain the difference here.
Yeah, so there are a lot of solutions out there that have been out there for a while, and unfortunately, they're probably not good enough to actually scan multiple people. There are ones that scan maybe 2 or 3, but really, when you think about it, doesn't necessarily help so much if you have a lot of footfall coming in through an office. Now, bearing in mind, we're obviously looking at the pandemic as it is today, but we have to think about the future as well. What's going to happen in 2 or 3 years' time when we still want to be careful about germs and diseases, but people may necessarily not be mentioning COVID-19 so much in their everyday life. We can't really keep people going through these long processes and queues all the time, because ultimately it will stop failing. It will stop working at some point and people will give up. However, if you have a system in place where you can actually scan multiple people rather than asking them to queue up so that it can be scanned one by one, then you're actually got a future-proof solution later on down the line, and you'll still be able to protect your colleagues and your businesses from any kind of sickness and other kind of thermal threats that they could bring in with them. So you can actually have multiple people coming in at the same time. And this device will actually scan up to 30 people consecutively at the same time. So 30 people standing in the same frame, they'll all be captured with their temperatures.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Craig. It's our solution is definitely more BAU, isn't it, for when people go back? Because I mean, a lot of people will see this as a COVID-19 camera, but we're not seeing it as that. We're seeing it as a virus prevention or protection camera that's got much more uses in the future. We just have to go back to slides 2 or 3 to see the number of man hours and the amount of money the businesses lose, and this camera can really help them out with that moving forward. So
yeah, absolutely.
Moving on to the here's a quick example of the CMS system, and you can see on the screen here about the facial recognition aspect of the camera. So we've got a couple of people circled here. So there's Francis and there's Paul there, and they're both registered as employees of D-Link. So the camera will recognise them when they come in, and everyone else is a stranger on the system here.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably at this point, people might be thinking about how it captures that kind of information and what that means for today's data standards like GDPR and things like that. The camera is completely GDPR compliant. There's an actual purge system, so you can store how much data is retained and when that data gets deleted. There's also an enrollment system, so if you actually want the facial recognition to work, you have to enroll that person into the system as well. Otherwise, they'll just come up as a stranger. Now, once you've enrolled them, obviously that's up to you how you store that data and the processes behind it. But in order to enroll people, you generally have to give consent anyway. So you're sticking to the GDPR rules.
Yeah, I don't think that's such an issue if it's your staff that you're enrolling. Is it? It could be more of an issue if it's a shared office building where there's like 3 or 4 companies in the same office, but probably not an issue if it's just like D-Link's head office and D-Link owns the whole building, etc.
That's right. But the nice thing about the CMS is it's completely manageable anyway. It's very simple to just delete images, identify the people with a search, using the search, because it's very clever like that. You can actually search based upon a single image and find all of those images where someone's been in and out and delete them off.
Well, and here's the screen where you do that, Craig. So nice linking there.
Good segue. Yes, it's anybody that's used a mobile phone recently will know how apps work. And how this is actually built is very easily customizable. You can have common features that you'll use all the time, and then you go into all features, and that'll basically show you every little setting that you need. And you just click it as you would opening an app on your mobile phone. So it's very intuitive.
Installation. So we recommend that you install the camera between 2 and 2.5 meters at a slight tilt, so that it can scan people's heads or faces as they walk through. We recommend that you position the black body between 3 and 5 meters. It should be pretty effective between those distances. Try to keep the black body out of direct sunlight or any kind of any environmental factors that could affect its temperature reading. So don't put it next to an air conditioner or a fire or anything like that. Try to keep it out of those kind of areas.
Absolutely.
And as I mentioned, it's highly recommended that we use the camera indoors for the accuracy of the unit.
Well, yes, that's right, Alan, which leads me on to the whole point of the black body. So just to give you an idea, a black body actually absorbs all the ambient temperature in its current environment. And the camera uses that temperature as like a visual aid. So imagine a color chart, and if it's drawing in all of this heat, it appears as quite white. And then if it's something's very cold, it'll be very dark. So what it does is it takes that temperature, and you actually tell the camera, so you'll go up to the black body, you'll measure the temperature of the current environment, and so you can tell the camera what the black body is reporting. So for example, if it's 40 degrees in that area, you'll tell the camera the black body is in a 40-degree environment. So then the camera knows by looking at the black body what temperature 40 degrees looks like. And so if someone comes in with a temperature above 40 degrees, it's going to be whiter, so it knows that it's going to be hotter than 40 degrees. Likewise, if it's going to be darker than that 40 degrees, you know it's under that temperature, and that's generally how it can be so accurate.
Brilliant, brilliant. Just a couple of bits before we end. So on that last installation guide, you saw that you can attach it to the ceiling. A couple of examples that we've had, it's either been mounted to the floor stand or the wall mount that's included in the box. But you can get this ceiling mount separate if that's easier for you. The warranty details. As standard, it has a 2-year return to base warranty. You can purchase an extended warranty for an additional 3 years. You just have to do that within the first 3 months of installation. Contact us for any more details on the warranty or any additional bits you need to know about that. So that's pretty much it for this edition of Bytesize. As we said, the camera, it's a brand new product for us, so we are expecting a lot of questions, a lot of queries, and Craig is currently setting up a demo system. I don't want to promise anyone too much, but if you want to learn about any of those things, drop us an email, uki-sales@dlink.com as always, or give us a call on 0208 955 9000 and we'll get you more details and we'll help you out as best we can. Thanks very much for listening. We'll see you all next time.
Thanks, everyone. See you on the next Bytesize.